বলটা তো হলো ফার্স্ট বলটা, সেকেন্ড বলটা পুরো মাঝ মাঠ থেকে বল নিয়ে গিয়ে একা বললো। ইয়ারটা হলো না, আর কি বলবেন?
প্রথম অ্যানাউন্সমেন্ট আমি রাখতে পারি।
After English party yesterday, back to the motion, the outstanding personality from the state for a long time associated friend. These are somebody. I was surprised that I even outside researcher, political researcher, but I never knew that would be interested in administration. So it's something to get the IT Madras, a very prestigious place. The topic we can see the company. Yes. No, sorry. Audible? So thank you, Prof. Good morning to all of you. I'm very happy to be part of Indocrypt after 20 years gap. I had a paper in 2002 when Indocrypt was conducted in IIT Madras. And thank you for this opportunity. So I'm talking
more as a member of the National Security Advisory Board. Whatever we as the country are facing attacks, cyber attacks on a daily basis, one major attack on one of our leading medical institutions. This has become more a menace and a nuisance. And what I try to cover in this talk is what could be the plausible reason for this type of thing. Where are we fundamentally wrong? Some analysis that I did it for a period of time. I like to cover that. And then what are some solutions that we are doing, specifically from the hardware perspective. So I'll assure you that this is going to be 1% cryptography, 99% systems engineering. But that 1% cryptography that we are going to use will form the crucial part of building this large scale system. That's how I'm trying to tie it up with Indocrypt. So the whole issue is that when you look at computing, there's a set of stacks. The slowest part of the stack is the digital hardware. And then after that comes a layer called a microprogramming layer, which is a microarchitecture which is built out of these digital circuits. And then sits the operating system. Then sits all these system programming levels, like compilers, etc. And then there is an assembly language level. The assembly language level is directly with the hardware or what the system calls to go through the operating system. Above that is the system programs, the compiler, etc., and then high-level programming. So this is system stack. And now, traditionally, what has happened is that every layer is actually built as a virtual machine. Each layer has an input language and an output language. And every layer is sort of virtualized for the above layers, and that is very, very important to it. For example, if you don't, somebody working in a high-level programming will not bother which compiler you are using, what is the underlying hardware, which processor, number, cache, nothing. They just write the program and the other layers are responsible for taking this program and trying to execute it properly. Similarly, somebody who is writing a compiler, today compiler also has something called a low-level virtual machine. And so everybody is bothered about compiling to that low-level virtual machine language and not actually to the binary. So there is a conversion from the LLVM we call to the binary. So there are multiple layers and each layer works in isolation. And the reason for this is typically because of portability. Just take a simple example. Suppose I don't have this virtualization. Just to teach Hello World in a first year engineering course will take the complete BTech curriculum, right? Because Hello World needs printer and printer needs device drivers, right? And you need to go through the entire stack before I can reasonably make somebody write a good Hello World program. So this virtualization is very, very important because we want to write a single software and that needs to run on multiple hardware. So there needs to be an independence, there needs to be a standardization layer which makes the top layer agnostic to the bottom layer and vice versa. And just because of this ignorance, like when I'm writing a compiler, I don't really care how the hardware is going to execute. When I'm designing a hardware, I don't really care what are the basic concepts about or how programmers do code. So this type of an ignorance across layers forms the basis for people to come and attack. And this ignorance is really cast by the hackers who come to different layers and start attacking the system. And what I will do is a quick survey of what are all the different attacks that have happened at these different layers and how a systemic view is necessary for us to prevent these type of this nuisance and menace in the long run. Now, so to sum up what I have told so far, virtual machines, it's a boon because it is very easy to use. These questions, all the questions, the answers are known. Have you bothered about the instruction set architecture while writing a C program? Have you cared about size of RAM when you wrote a program? No, because today I can assume we were in a position to execute an executable which is more than say 1 GB or say 500 MB size on a system which has 256 MB because of the notion of virtual memory, pages, etc. So you easily port a program from one architect to another, right? The reason is this virtualization. Why it is a bait? It's a bait from a security perspective, and that will be the objective of this. Now let us look at this. What has happened at the application level? I'll go top down. We can say application is top, right? So the first thing was that many applications had these crypto backdoors. This is designed because design weaknesses for a particular key or message. So we have seen that, okay, I designed a software long back and still it is part of your entire stack. Sometimes legacy cannot be removed because of compliance with other parts. So since I can't remove the legacy, I go on with the same thing and try to build layer after layer on top of it. But the inherent weakness exists. And many times it is just sheer strength more than mathematics where a crypto algorithm can be broken. And that is where many times we have a problem with the crypto because some outdated algorithm cannot be changed because of legacy issues can keep the system. Then there are system backdoors. I'll give you some very interesting examples, at least one or two of that. These are actually malware returned to compromise the system. Okay. So I can have a time bomb inside a system. It can essentially say at the end of the warranty period, make everything slow. Right? We did some experiments. Like you put a simple oscillator. We did it in one of the labs. 2 or 3 oscillators just can ungate and keep pumping on. It goes 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, right? And this type of oscillators, you put 4 or 5, you can increase the temperature of the chip by around 100 degrees centigrade. Because it just keeps toggling. And as the wire toggles, it actually generates more heat. Right? So what I need to do if I want to burn a system, put some oscillators, put some timer, and then the timer goes say some 3 years. It just heats the system and burns it. Okay, so these are some of the things that we can do. These are simple system backdoors. Then of course, application backdoors are there. So there's these are basically modifications to legitimate programs designed to bypass security mechanisms and is often inserted by those who have legitimate access to source code or distributed memories. And this can result in system compromise as well and not specific to any particular programming language. So this, I give a lot of at least 3 or 4 examples of these applications. Now, how prevalent is this problem? So this is a survey. I have not seen a typical survey like this after 27. People may not have the courage to do it, but in 2007, this was a survey. And there you see that 100 commercially off-the-shelf open source applications are picked randomly and started seeing what are the possible things. Packages with dead code, 79 of them out of 100. 79% of the packages had dead code. What do you mean by dead code? Is it really dead or will it come alive at some exceptional scenario? Give some very critical inputs, will it come alive? So this is a very interesting case study. A criminal was actually arrested in one of the countries because they found certain incriminating evidence in his laptop for which he did not give the password to the investigating agency. So he went and served a sentence for 7 years and came back and then sued the OEM of that laptop. He said, hey, you said that nobody can access my system without the password. I am not given the password. How did that investigating agency actually got access? And that is the background. Okay, so this is something, a dead code, is it really dead or it's going to come alive in the case of something? So this is one. And there are a lot of packages with unwanted code. Like you are talking about some scientific computing, some multimedia code is there, for example. So unwanted code, it's 23 packages. These can be potentially backdoors. Packages with suspicious behavior, 89 of them. Packages possible malicious code, 76 of them. Known worms, trojans, rootkits, etc., 21 packages. and possible worms, trojans, rootkits, etc. 69 packages. So this is not a very good scene. And these are the software we are trying to use, and that is something which is very. This is as old as 2007, but now we see more and more software coming up, and we really don't know what is happening at the application level. And the targets of application backdoors can be web applications. We have many of them. We have server applications. A lot of things are moving on to the cloud. And then network appliances become very important because we have a lot of communication, and that too the digitization that we are doing. We have many communication devices. And even if one of the routers have an admin password, which is the original default factory set password, and they have not changed, one can go in and route the traffic to a known destination, to a known destination for a hacker, take a copy of the traffic and then send it back to the original destination. Even if they could change the route, there are a lot of things that one can do. Of course, on the operating system, we have a very interesting operating system. Every day we have an attack. Right? So the attacker's motivation is once we have this commercially off-the-shelf software, for example, you say install, right? When you are installing a software, you see in very tiny letters. Last 2 years, I could not read it. It's become old. Anybody have read that entire agreement before clicking OK? Right? You have installed hundreds of software in your mobile phones. Have you ever listened to? It'll indemnify that fellow from everything in life. Okay. So that is the thing. So normally, when you take all this commercially off the shelf or / open source, you are not doing a source code analysis, right? So you may, with all full permission, install that backdoor for yourself, right? So that is one thing. And the major motivation is that people want data out of their system. Of course, data is also, where is your money today? It is in some in a Oracle database. It is one field in this thing, and somebody goes and make it negative, you become a liability. Okay, so it's all digital, right? So ultimately, people want data, and this you can. So now, what is the current state of detection? This has been true for last 20 years. I don't think we are going to improve on this. The current state of detection is application backdoors best detected by inspecting the source or binary code of the source. Right? And how do you inspect a huge binary code, like millions of lines? When I booted the Shakti microprocessor, India's microprocessor, before the login prompt comes for Linux, found that 72 million instructions are executed. When will I look at all these 72 million instructions and find out whether there is a root key or not? These are practically possible, right? And so application backdoor scanning is imperfect, right? So and backdoors in source may be detected quickly, but backdoors in binaries often take years to surface. Okay? I'll give you an example of this. And more security code reviews focus on finding vulnerabilities with little emphasis on backdoors, right? So I'll give many examples for this so that we can see what is the current state of detection. No analysis of the binary is actually possible in a very clear way. Now, whatever we are trying to detect today as a source code review is only based on the static analysis. That is, when the program is not in execution, you look at the source code and see if there are certain patterns. Okay, so this is a very interesting thing that had happened. This is Borland interface was a database which was used in almost all top security agencies of some countries, right? And Borland interface 4, 5, 6, like you are seeing now, 2006, 8, 10, many operating systems are coming. Similarly, this Borland interface has come, and somebody for some reason went through the source code, and somewhere they found the word politically. Okay, right? Suddenly, just source code by some divine grace saw the word politically. Then they started understanding what is politics to do with interland code, what is a Borland interface. Okay, then they went and started doing the code analysis. and ultimately found out that any installation across the world, if you enter the username as politically and password as correct, you get full access. A very simple example for this. And this went undetected for over 7 years, and this was detected by chance. Okay, so this is something. This is better. No. So one of the things is that we have to live. Somehow we have to live with software that we cannot trust, right? And something that we write as a software without understanding the operating system, by intention we may not put certain values, but people can come and use that route to enter into the system. So this is also because the compiler may not have compiled in the correct way, or many other things that we can see. Now coming to compilers, what is say GCC 4.0? It is the GCC 4.0 source code compiled using GCC 3.0. Right? So a compiler gives birth to that. Only Professor Bimal was saying he has a great grand student, right? This student gives the next PhD. Except only this compiler gives the birth for the next compiler. Okay. So the older version can have Trojan horses and it cannot be part of the source code of the newer version, but can get injected into the compiled version. This is a very simple thing, right? So I have this is some very simple conversation that so suppose we are having a one, say we have /n in C for going to next line. So I may have some /a/b/not something like that, which I would have put it in GCC 0.0. And when GCC 0.0 is compiling GCC 1.0 source code to give GCC 1.0 executable, 0.0 will check if that's a /not. If it is not that, it just add that source code to GCC 1.0. So in GCC 1.0 source code, you will not have that /not. But when I use /not in my program, it can actually do some functionality which you don't know. And similarly, GCC 1.0 also will, that source code also when it's compiling GCC 2.0, again it will see /not is there, and then it can. So for me to get a full assurance that what I see in the source code is what exactly is in the in the executable, I have to start looking at GCC. The first assembly code is compiled GCC to make it into an executable. So this is something. This is a Turing talk. So this is something very, very phenomenal, right? So this is ultimate security that we are looking at. So this is about compilers. Now I'll come to operating systems. Now the architecture, we can't blame the architecture. Of course, I'm an architecture guy. A little bit I know about architecture more than operating system, but we can't blame the architecture guys. Architecture per se, when the computer architecture came up, they have given a lot of what we call as protections. I'll talk about some protections that are there in our recent architecture. But what happened? The operating system guys wanted to write one single operating system that would work on every architecture in the world. And these protections that each hardware microarchitecture provides for security purposes, they are specific to those architectures, and none of these fellows want to use those specific things because they cannot code. If I write for say Intel, I can't use it for Sun. If I write for Sun, I could not use it for IBM. So Solaris, Intel, and Power were the three trinities of the early architecture, and each one had their own thing. For example, the ego was so much that these guys did not even agree on how to store an integer. For example, 125. Suppose I say I can store only one digit in a memory location, 125. So I start with 100. Suppose I want to store it in location 1000, 1001, and 1002. Intel was storing it as 521. Sun was storing it as 125. It's called little Indian and big Indian. And God knows why. What is the reason? Just ego. Oh, I am great. You are great. Okay. And even they could not even agree on how to store an integer. We were not always secure artifacts. And some operating systems, Linux or Windows came up. These two are the dual god of those days. they want to do it on all the three. So they wrote one software, completely bypass all the security constructs which are put on this. So all the security hardware constructs are actually like a heat generation engine heating the system to cool the fan to again execute and heat it back. So there was an adiabatic thermodynamic cycle happening with no constructive use of these hardware. So there are junk hardware put inside. Architecture did it with great intention, but these guys never agreed. Okay, so that's the reason. So I'll give you one earlier attack in case of what we call as stack smashing. So suppose let us take this program, right? So yeah, so this is a main. It basically calls myproc another routine. This myproc again calls another routine, right? Let us say this main is executing at a very high privilege level. It can be a system call. It is calling some one user program, which is again calling another routine here. So every time a routine is called, the things are written on the stack. Okay. So what happens is, so first, when main starts executing, there is a memory location for AM, BM, and CM. These are the three data here. And then when it calls myproc, your L1, your return address, this is a return address. After myproc completes, it has to come to L1. So your return address is put here. And then the data, the value of AM and BM, that is 2 and 1, is passed to this myproc. Now this is called a frame pointer, this is called a stack pointer. So this is how it executes. Now myproc starts executing and it comes to this stage of calling nest sk1. Okay. Now what nest sk1 will do? So at that point when you are calling nest sk1, again what happens? There will be some locations for AM, BM, and CM. 3 chunk of BM I have not assigned anything, and 6 here. And then when next sk1 is being called, its return address L2 of myproc, this will be stored here, and the 2 arguments AM and CM, 3 and 6 are connected. And now next, what happens? So next sk1 starts executing, it finishes, and then what happens? The answer is stored here. So it will be 16 to 3, that is 18, it's stored here. And then it starts executing from your return address, that is L2. Now CM plus AM will be added, that will be some 21. It goes back to this 21, and again, then it starts executing from there. So this is how the first in, first out policy, the last call routine will be the first to, last in, first out policy will be executed, and that's how the stack is. So stack has been completely a very important data structure in the execution of programs even till today. So if I call a subroutine, the subroutine finishes before I come back here. So this same last in, first out policy is followed. Now, what is interesting here is at every point these return addresses are stored here. Okay? And please note that every routine has an access to this entire stack. That's how many of the operating systems have been written. Now when we see this, so before I go to this, what the hacker does is that instead of storing this data, they can basically store, see, even an instruction is binary, right? Instruction is 0 and 1. So I can, when this routine, next sk1, if it is going to be a malicious routine, what it will do is, it will write some instructions here on the stack, and it will go and modify this return address to point to the start of those instructions. Instead of L2, it will point to the address there here. So when I go back to return back, instead of going to that original L2, I will go and start executing something on the stack. And that will be the malicious code, and that will take control of the system. And when I am executing, when I go back to this L2, say this is the high privilege, this is the next privilege, this is the least privilege. But when I write something here and I start executing, when I return back, I go to this privilege. So I will be executing this code, this malicious code, with the privilege of myproc, right? So I also do something called a privilege escalation. So what happens? Just to sum up, SSK word, instead of doing multiplying this numbers, that's from Yugar here. It writes some set of assembly instructions on the stack, and it makes this return address point to the start of this assembly instruction and returns. When it returns, as you know, it will start executing from this address. Instead of L2, it will start executing from an address in this stack, and it will start executing the code on this stack. And the privilege level of that code will be the privilege level of my proc. So what happens here? So I get to execute a code at a higher privilege than what I have. So this is called privilege escalation. And this is how stack smashing happens. Okay. So the same thing. So there is a stack from frame pointer. These are the local variables. These are the parameters, as you saw in the previous slide. There are parameters here. Then the return address and the local values, as you see here. These are the local values, return address, and these are the parameters. So similarly, you have this here. And what you do here, what you do here is on the buffer, you write these values, you write a code here, and you change the return address to point to this code itself. And when you come back, you start writing, you start executing a malicious code with an enhanced privilege. And this is what is completely, so what this code can be something called this /bin/sh code. It's a very small code. It will give you a shell script in a higher privilege. And that can basically kill you. You get a root shell, that's it, you become the admin, the entire system is yours. So there are lot more of effort that has happened over a period of time. What's that? Yeah. So there are a lot of things that have happened over a period of time. Wherein this sort of what does this rootkit do? Once I get a shell, I go and put something in the boot. Right? I go to the boot sector and put a code there, and I keep silent. And then next time I reboot the system, right? Sometimes we reboot the system. Then what happens? Instead of booting the original boot code, this malicious code will come up, and then it will take complete control over the system. The simple thing that it can do today in some of our good operating systems, today what happens is it will just do nothing. Whatever keystroke you are doing, it will keep sending outside. Just observe. This is called passive observe. And then you log into your bank account, you log in here, you log in there, everywhere. All these details will go. Okay, very simple attacks. So this is the rootkit here. Now, yeah. So I just explaining you this. So it goes and sits in the master boot sector record, and what it does, it can do a zero interaction malicious services like phishing the web server, passive monitoring, just keystroke logger, and then it can start doing many other things. Ransomware is an example today. You can just go and encrypt your entire system and then ask crores of money, 200 crores, 500 crores, depending upon the value of this. And this data I can sell it in the dark web. So $5 is complete data of data of birth, Aadhaar number, etc. Sold at $5 or so here. Okay. So a lot of revenue. And so this is good. The last one is microprogram. So we have talked about application, talked about compilers, we have talked about operating system. And the reason why this stack matching is happening because operating system did not bother to have these levels. Right? For example, Intel has 4 levels. Right? RISC-V has 4 levels. Power has 4 levels. ARM also has 4 levels. Level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3. So the processor, the microarchitecture can work in one of these 2 major levels. And when you are a level 0, in Intel, you are the highest privilege. Level 1, so I can go and protect certain memory, saying only level 0 programs can touch it. I can protect memory, saying level 1 and level 0 can touch it. Level 2, level 1, level 0. So I can put privileges on the memory. And if I put, and I can also certify certain memories as it cannot execute if it's a non-executable memory segment. And if those things were rigorously implemented in the operating system, the stack matching would not be possible. Because if I say the stack is only a data segment and not an executable segment, then the whole problem would have solved. But the way I specify an executable segment versus just a simple data segment in Intel architecture, in Solaris, in Power, they were different. So when people started writing operating system, they wanted a general view, and so they killed it. Okay, so that is where the whole problem starts, and we live with that problem, right? So, and last one on the microprogramming. See, today there is a 32-bit instruction set. Every instruction is 32-bit, right? Can you say, are you looking at all the 2 power 32 combinations to see what's happening? No. Many of the times, when you look at many of these instruction bits, when you take a assembly code and you assemble it, then you get this binary thing. Some of the bits are still said they are reserved bits. God knows what does it mean. Right? So I go and give some other combinations of this bit. It can do something like that. And so the question here is: do you guarantee that these bits do not map onto a bilateral instruction that will stop your status register or shut down the system? Or it can generate something called a power virus, right? So I can just keep executing one program again and again. Go and pump your floating point. Do a complete pump on your floating point. Floating point is the real hot area inside the architecture. And it can just go and heat up the system. So a lot of things can be done. So this guarantee we don't have, right? And note that power dissipated is directly proportional to the toggles on the wires. There are other power today with the recent 5 nanometers and anything less than 20 nanometer technology. Just for the people who are not computer architecture, digital hardware is made using transistors. When I say some nanometer, roughly, not a very strict definition. If you assume the transistor is a square, then the size of the square can be very roughly equated to the nanometer. So we are talking of 5 nanometer. Each transistor is a square, in which the size of the square is 5 nanometer. To just give you a feel, a well-maintained human hair, cleaning shampoo and other things of course, it will be 50 micrometers. So the diameter. So it will be 1 by 1000 or more than that. 1 by 1000. Yeah, 1 by 1000 of the diameter of the human hair. So that's the size of the transistor. And there are wires, and if you start toggling these wires, it becomes hot. Right? So power wires is something you can go and pump all these big areas and generate more heat. Last one, which I think Kharagpur, Delhi, and Chester from IIT, many people are working on this is the side channel analysis. See, one thing is when we make hardware, it is a one-way ticket to the moon, right? So you make it correctly, fine. If you make something wrong in that, you have to just show it off in some place, right? This pose. It's not like software, right? Software, you make a bug, you can fix the bug by asking the user, should I report something goes wrong, should I report? By taking feedback from the user at your cost, at your inconvenience, I get the bug report, I fix it, and resell it as next version. So I make money by the bug rate actually generated, correct? Right? So, but in this case, in hardware, it is not the case. So when we design hardware, we also put certain circuitry inside it to make it testable. So this is called design for testability. So, and what we do is given a chip, there will be multiple sub chips here, and we actually connect them using shift register, and we actually put in some test vectors to this, make this sub chip respond to the test vector, store the transfer here itself, and again ship the transfer out. So the chip will work in 2 modes. One is the test mode or the debug mode, and another will be the normal mode. In the debug mode, all these registers will be connected as a chip register, and we'll be pumping in test vector. Once we pump in the test vector through this, then we go to the normal mode and make each subchip execute it, get the answers here, and then shift out the answer. By shifting out the answer for a previous test vector, we will pump in the new test vector. This is how this keeps executing. And this is called this type of a construct to go and debug, faults in different parts of the chip is called design for testability. And this is a massive topic. And then suppose one of the chip is a crypto engine. I have to put this DFT to find out whether the crypto engine is working correctly. But the same DFT can be used to basically pump in certain vectors to actually go and attack and get some details about this crypto engine. This is called side channel attack. And there are a lot of work done exploiting DFT to basically get certain very interesting information of and breaking the crypto engine. So this is at the micro architecture level. So to sum up, you need virtualization because we need ease of usage of systems. It's possible to use otherwise, but you need security too. So one of the solutions is to build everything indigenously, and that hardware to software, and that may not be very interesting stuff or very quick stuff. Many people have been trying, but one of the things that we can do is, can we do something more in the architecture so that we can get good stuff. So this is what we are doing, and just spend the next 4 or 5 minutes on what we are doing in the RISC-V security mechanism that will be part of our Shakti microprocessor. There are 3 important things that we do. One thing is called high assurance boot, also known as secure boot. Another is a secure hypervisor, and then physical memory protection. So 3 secure artifacts I want to very quickly introduce and take 2 minutes for each, so that this gives a solution for trying to execute an unknown software, a software for which we cannot assume some, even though it is your source code is open. We have seen many instances where let's say source code analysis, static analysis may not work. We see compilers issues and many things that we have presented. So that so how do we coexist with the unknown software and an unknown hardware also? But then we would like to have a reasonable level of security there. So let us see how this can happen. So the first one is high assurance boot. So I said about bootkits, right? When the system boots, instead of some boot code, some other code gets inserted, and that code gets ultimate control. To stop this rootkit, which is actually more than 50 to 70% of the attacks happen because of rootkit. To just stop this, we are now looking at this high assurance boot, and because of so here is the only point where we start using cryptography, and probably one point where we use cryptography in a big way, right? So what happens is there is a system image, right? That is factory certified. Now, what will the rootkit do? They will go and insert something else in this system image, right? So I have a system image which is factory certified. Then I have a signature of this system image. It can be a digital signature. Just take the system image and sign it, system image. And then there is a public key that I use. It's an asymmetric key, public key. And then there are some device details. So this is how your complete boot code will exist. So when a boot code exists, this will be how it will exist. And when the system starts booting, this is what will be stored in the first master boot record. So there will be a system image, a signature of the system image using SHA, and then there is a public key, and then there are some device details. Okay, so when the boot starts, in your hardware, the device details, the same device details will be fused here. Then a hash of this public key will be put here, and then the public key will be available. So a public key hash will be there and a public key. Now what happens here, when the system starts booting, first these device details that are part of your master boot record will be compared here. There will be a verification that happens. Then your public key comes in here, right? And your signature. See, the signature will be stored as a hash here. The signature will be stored in an encrypted form using a private key, And so what happens is, with your public key coming here, your this hash will be decrypted and compared with this signature. Okay, and then if it is the same, it will boot. Otherwise, if it is different, it goes on. So I will also have a better flowchart to explain. So essentially, we are using two security constructs here. One is the public key infrastructure, and another is a hash, right? And this ensures that the system image that I'm booting is exactly the same which I have signed in the factory, right? So if there is a difference, if this system image got changed, then the system will not even boot, it will fail. So by this, we stop the rootkits and we establish something called a root of trust. And so this is how. So what happens when you develop the boot code? This is the software image. Then there is a signature of the software image, right? And then what you do, this whole message, the software image, is taken through a SHA-256, and then there is a private key encryption, right? So this whole image is taken through a private key encryption, and that signature is stored here. So this signature is the SHA-256 digital sign of the software image, encrypted using a public key, and that is stored here, right? And the private key encrypted using a private key, and the public key of the corresponding public key of this private key is stored here, and this whole thing is put onto the flash. So when the system boots, this public key is taken, and that is used to decrypt this signature, and you get this SHA-256. You take this entire software image, again take it through the SHA-256. You get the hash here. This hash and this hash are compared, and if it is okay, you boot. Otherwise, you go into the single. So this is how complete rootkit is stopped. Okay. Then once this is done, the next level, we would like to have an isolation between the operating system and the hardware. And this isolation, we put a layer. The layer is what we call as a configurable hardware enforced safety and security. We call it as chest, but this is something called an isolation or separation kernel. In the world, there existed only one separation kernel by a company which was working only on Intel architecture. Very happy to tell one of the IIT Madras incubated companies from Bangalore, SecureWeave, has got another indigenous separation kernel, which today works on both on Intel and also on the RISC-V architecture. We have quoted on 30. And what it does, this does a complete control. So for the applications like endpoint devices, gateways, and automotive, avionics, IIoT, and threat analysis systems, there are three types of things that we can do by introducing this layer. This basically will give you a way by which you can monitor every action the operating system is trying to take on the architecture, right? And through this, I can provide a lot of kernel protection, like critical memory protection, critical register protection, DMA protection. DMA is direct memory access, and a lot of things can happen there. And similarly, I can also do this privilege escalation prevention. I can whitelist certain software for execution, whitelist certain actions. So now there is an operating system which is executing, and it is trying to access different parts of the memory. And the whole problem is about memory access. Okay? And now I, as the intermediate layer, can examine these memory accesses, and if there is an access which it is not supposed to do, I can flag it and I can bring the system to the control. So this is one very important thing. And from an embedded devices point of view, this will ensure that there is a multi-VM, mixed criticality, application isolation, real-time response. All these things can be monitored using this separation kernel. And then whenever there is an attack, now how does that attack happen? So the entire attack can be deciphered by looking at the memory access pattern. And so I can do a very extensive malware reverse engineering using these separation kernels. So these are all very interesting applications of this separation kernel. The last one is physical memory protection. As I told you, the architecture now gives you that this memory can be used only by this privilege level code, and it can set a boundary for it. So every location in the memory can basically have a particular privilege, and it can be assigned a particular privilege, and it can execute on a particular privilege. So this is something today it is very, very important, because today we are going on to embedded systems and we are having real-time OS. The real-time OS traditionally has not evolved with a very good memory management model, right? And so they just look at the entire memory as a single monolithic memory with the same privilege. And and when we start putting these real-time OS on some of the physical systems, like let us say today I have a SCADA system which is controlling the sewage, right? And somebody hacks into the sewage system and breaks the code, the whole city will start sticking, right? So this is a smart city concept. The smart can be is that the smarter hacker, we can make a smart city stick, right? So at those levels, we don't want to change the outcomes, but we will try to bring in additional security through this physical memory protection. And we say that this part of the code will execute, this cannot be changed, people cannot write into that code. So no malicious attack can happen. And these are some very important things that come up, especially when we look at embedded systems that are going to be very close to human beings. So, right. So these are all the benefits. So I could have multiple processes, and for each of these processes, I can assign certain memory which will be used in that particular privilege mode. For example, process 1 and process 3 can be the user mode, while process 2 can be in a hypervisor mode, supervisor mode. This can be in a machine mode. And so every memory can be associated with privilege, and that will essentially save a lot of embarrassment and a very big answer to this matter. So friends, so there is a need now to start using whatever great research is happening at the theory side to come into the hardware and the software interface, the duet, and try to fix certain issues. So there is a necessity to have a complete systemic look, right? So rather than in isolation, and that is where we will try real-time good solutions to make our secure future. We as computer scientists and mathematicians, the whole world in the next couple of decades will either praise us, saying we are doing a fantastic system which has made the way of living, human living very good, or it can also curse us for giving us a useless system which has got into every private data of them and kill their kill their privacy, especially kill their security, etc. So the entire thing lies on our very strict compliance and the way we look at security this broader perspective. And let us start working. So the systemic view is very, very important. And unless we have that, we may not come out with a constructive solution. So every conference, I'm very thankful to talk to Malvi here. Every conference should now look at this interface. Even courses, for example, I see professors from IIT here. We have introduced a course at our third semester for our computer science students. It's called NAND to Digital. So we start with a NAND gate, we build a set of digital circuits, educate them on what is multiplex, memory, etc. Build a small microarchitecture, define an assembly language for it, a binary language for it, and then define a mnemonic, ask them to write an assembler, then design a LVM, a low-level virtual machine, a stack-based virtual machine, ask them to write a translator from that LVM to this assembly, and then we have an LR1 grammar, abridged version of Java called Jack. So write a compiler from Jack to the LVM. So finally, the Tetris game, many of us have played, is now coded in Jack, available. So they use the same compiler, that compiler to compile LVM, that translator to translate from LDF to assembly, and that assembler to translate it into binary and use the hardware they have designed to run it and show that it's working. And this is an exercise we did. We are able to complete it in 25 hours on this whole exercise. We have also MOOC courses. Yesterday, MOOC was introduced during the banquet. So I strongly suggest academia to start introducing before the kids start going to the system level courses at the second, third semester. This could be taught. I think that will be a very important contribution. People have to understand the entire set of layers, what is done, where is done, how it is done. And I think that will be the perfect answer to the question. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Questions?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful talk. So I just wanted to know your comment on the idea of this in-memory encryption to address some of these issues.
Yes.
There is a debate about the overhead it should have.
Yes.
So how would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. So data in motion and data at rest are to be completely encrypted, and that is the overall thing. The point of in-memory encryption comes from the fact that many of the database today are in memory. If you look at high frequency trading in a stock exchange, we cannot afford to have it on even on the fastest SSD. I think Hitachi has the fastest SSD. Solid state device. I can't even do that because the thing is, I become little less high frequency trading stock exchange. So in-memory database becomes extremely important. The moment you have in-memory database, then encrypting that would be extremely important, because if you have a disk and start, there will be some trace of this. So many of the zero-day attacks that happen are in-memory attacks. They come in, go into the system, do everything on the memory, and shut down and come back. So no trace of this. So there is no way by which from a RAM I can go and find out what was stored. So in that context, in-memory encryption becomes extremely important. One of the interesting things that have come over a long time is that many of these architectures have this inherent built crypto processors and even peripherals today. And so very quickly, so that the DMA becomes very important. DMA is direct memory access. I did not go to the CPU to get that. I can directly the peripheral, in this case the device, can access memory and transfer data to the memory and back. And when this happens, there should be an encryption also happening in that. So all this can be put together, and that's how the systems are built. And when we have this DMH, again, it is not under the control of the processor, and all the secure artifacts are in the processor. And that is precisely where this separation further becomes important. So if you look all these things put together, will fill up the story. But this is very important.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Yes.
Having indigenous operating system is not a good idea actually.
No, I didn't say it's not a good idea. It's going to be a long-term process.
Yeah, but
Right,
we could have long-term goals.
Correct. And then the notion is that today RISC-V, for example, we say it is a global standard. When we started in 2013, there were only 3 of us. MIT Berkeley and I started that. And today we have 1,500 people. The reason is that we have tried to make it as a BSD organization and invited good global contribution. And that is how we are able to take the global competition. See, suppose so a global acceptance sometimes becomes extremely important. Success of Linux is because of the BSD. So things should become open. At the same time, we should have a control over the source code, and then we should have a control over the hardware also. And that hardware, if it is done only for a particular country, I don't know how it scales. Because hardware, the pricing basically comes because suppose I give you a mobile phone, I say it's 10 lakhs, and you have a mobile phone for 30,000. I don't know, any patriotic talk will not make a princess buy the 10 lakhs. So the entire price of the hardware is completely be based on the total volume of it. So we need to come out with a balance of it. And the balance comes with a global assessment where like-minded people actually come out and say, I'm going to do this. This fight is a very interesting combination of like-minded industry and academy. So come out and say, okay, everything is becoming close. There are companies who said, the whole story did not become so complex. Still, a company basically told the bus is connecting the processor to the peripheral. I am going to make that bus standard proprietary. That means even if I want to design a peripheral, I have to go to that person for certification of the thing. Okay? So this is where this global action is. That's why indigenous means indigenous for the planet rather than.
Okay, thank you. I think we should conclude the session here and we can interact with him during the tea time. Before we conclude, let me request the program co-chair, one of the program co-chairs, Shantanu Sarkar, to stand over a memento for our token of appreciation. So we break for tea and we come back at 11.
করে নিতে হবে ব্যাপার ক্যামেরাটা